Welcome to the Esau McCauley podcast. I'm your host, Esau McCauley. We are joined with my friend, producer Mike.
Esau.
Yeah, I feel like people, we've been getting comments, people on the internet thinks that we really are beefing. Can you tell the people on the internet that I like you and that I'm actually nice to you all the time?
Please send help. I'm trapped here against my will. Mike. Listen to my cry for help, everyone.
Oh my goodness. And we have on the podcast our regular Malcolm Foley. I know you're a pastor, a co-pastor. Are you the pastor or the co-pastor Mosaic?
So co-pastor, we're both both equal pastors.
Yeah, co-pastor Mosaic, and you do a lot of stuff at Baylor, and you got a PhD. Anything else? And you write books. Oh, what's it?
All those things are true.
Oh, trust me, we're gonna talk about greed today. So what is the name? What is the name of your book though? So I can say it.
The name is The Anti-Greed Gospel.
The Anti-Greed Gospel. Author of The Anti-Greed Gospel. Today on the podcast, we are in a good mood, but I'm pretty sure as we get into the topic, this might not be the bucket of joy that we normally have here on the Esau McCauley podcast.
No.
But I thought I should start. Maybe I'll start off with this to make us feel a little bit less like down, because we got some heavy topics. This is coming the week after 4th of July. And I'm going to ask you this question. I didn't prepare y'all for this. This is Esau doing a curveball. Did either one of you watch the hot dog eating contest or the lemonade chugging contest? Did you watch any 4th of July sporting events?
I not only did not watch it, I did not know there was a lemonade chugging contest.
I didn't know that either.
There's a guy named, I forget his name, but this is not his real name. His nickname is Badlands.
I'm pretty sure that's what his parents named him.
Oh, yeah.
Esau.
It's like Badlands Chuck?
Yeah. So like he broke the record, I think.
Wow.
Because he chugged like a whole gallon of lemonade straight. And Joey Chestnuts broke the record for, I think he won like the 12th in a row of like hot dog champion. So like he is the LeBron James of hot dog championship. So like congratulations to you, Joey Chestnuts and Badlands. Did either one of y'all watch this?
No, Esau.
No.
I'm concerned that you did.
No, I can't even watch it. Like, have you not seen people shove
I've seen
70 hot dogs in their mouth?
I'm concerned for the guy's plumber afterwards.
Well, actually, one person to keep this even better. One person was disqualified because
Scandal.
In order to like, I guess for your thing to count, people are going to turn the podcast off. You have to like, how do you want to say, keep the food that you consume down.
Oh yeah, you can't throw it up
for a certain amount of time. And so during the ceremony, one of them had like a incident, and they were disqualified. Which I feel like I don't know what's
here's
worse.
The question, Esau.
Yeah.
If he would have eaten, what came back up?
Oh, come on. What are you doing?
Would he have still been disqualified?
I don't know.
I'm asking the questions people want to know.
This is definitely one of those, what do you want to call it? I read about this. I did not watch it because I cannot watch people shove hot dogs in their mouth. Anyways, happy 4th of July to everybody except for the people eating tons of hot dogs.
So proud to be an American.
So proud to be an American. There you go. But the first thing you want to talk about on a more serious note is there's a story that I saw in the news about AI. And one of the issues is that, obviously anytime you have something new, a new bit of technology, folks are going to use it for racism. Not just like, that's the Occam. I don't know what rule that is. If you create something new, we will use it for racism. But there's a story about this video AI thing that they're using to basically create a monkey, and they're giving the monkey a African-American female voice. And it's been getting millions of views by doing these kind of racialized tropes. And it's like a African-American woman who's in the shape of a monkey using her voice with lipstick and all those other things. I'm not going to tell you the tag and give you any ways to be able to identify it, but there have been people who have been protesting it because this is being monetized and people are making fun of this on Instagram. So the first question is, do either one of you actually use AI in your everyday life? And how do you feel about this particular incident? Is it turning you on AI or are you already out? What about you, Mike?
I feel like now is the time I need to admit that I have used AI to help me come up with titles for this very podcast.
Okay. So
I'm not saying
it's
confession
time.
But sometimes it just gets the ball rolling on the brainstorm.
Is there a correlation? So does the real Mike titles work better than the AI title?
I see AI as like
you didn't answer the question.
That's because I don't just copy and paste what it spits out. It's like it's like one of my direct reports, one of my copywriters, and I'm saying like, oh no, try something like this, or no, that's not good.
So once again, the AI mic. The AI mic aided.
Yes.
Have they performed better as far as the title?
No, because I take what they give me and I make it better.
Okay. So in other words, you don't want to admit that the AI is doing your job.
No, exactly. For sure. Esau's just waiting for when AI can replace me on this podcast.
How do people even know you're the real Mike? You can definitely AI fake Mike if you're on vacation. Malcolm, do you use AI at all?
I avoid it as much as I can. So I'm deeply not just skeptical, but I have some pretty significant resistance to it. One of the things that is most, so I told my church this. I could ask ChatGPT to write sermons for me in my voice.
Yeah.
And it can do it pretty well. I've read some of them. I could probably take this manuscript and preach it, and nobody would. People would be like, that's how.
I'd be hating on AI Esau. I'd be like, I could have done better than that. I know, right? They quote MLK every single time. Like, bro, I read more than Martin Luther King.
I know more than Martin Luther King.
Like, I know more than one black public figure. But like, I did this. Like, someone said, do a op-ed in the voice of Esau Macaulay, and it goes and it just drops the King quote every time. I was like, so I was hating, and I was like, but I am good to pull a King quote. So I'm hating on the fake version of me. But go ahead.
But as you joked about your producer losing his job, what's already happening is kind of entry level white collar jobs across the country are disappearing right now. I mean, the unemployment rate for folks, I think between the ages of 22 and 27 is at like 6.6%, and the national average is 4%. Because what a number of these companies are doing are just wiping out these jobs in anticipation of what they're about to automate. And so what's kind of at the top of my mind is thinking about the labor changes. I mean, it's one of the reasons why Pope Leo XIV chose that name, was because Leo XIII guided the church through the Industrial Revolution, and he's like, what we're about to go through is a similar kind of revolution.
So can I ask you a question about that? So we have people in our church who are roughly at that exact age group, who are graduating from college and in this early career. And I've been shocked at how hard it is to find that entry level job.
Yes.
And it is crazy competitive. And so I have seen that. Now, I will admit that I use AI occasionally too. Especially when I'm trying to do, like, it's not with the writing of the sermon, but say I want to like have an image and I don't want to pay, what's the name of the people? Like all the people who have like the stock. So I don't want to steal stock photos, but if I want to use images in my sermon, I always try to do the AI. And inevitably, and this is the race thing, if I say, give me a picture of a clergy person, it's going to be a white male. One of the things that also we have someone who, we have a female assistant pastor, associate pastor in our church. And I was trying to get them to do a cartoon of like me and her. And they could only do like a 20-year-old blonde white woman or like a 60-year-old woman. Like the idea that you could be like 40, you're just like out of their mind. You're either young or old. And I was like,
interesting.
These images, you have to train them. You have to like usually give a lot of prompts to like make them less racist. Or if you say, I would tell you, if you say like put a Latino or like an Asian person on there, you're going to get like some like basically a trope. They're going to put them in like indigenous garb or something. And so I have seen in my own context a smaller version of what they're talking about in this particular article. But also what this really is, and because like you have to put in the prompt to say, make a black person look like a monkey and then give them that black vernacular. So this isn't like an AI issue. It's more of a sin issue. So, I mean, can you create, create a bit of technology that won't be turned for racism? Is it possible? Like, is there a non-racist AI that is creatable?
Well, because this is not this is the other thing. Like, I mean, artificial intelligence is not, and this is an argument that we can have, but it's not intelligence. Like, it's not producing. It's largely compiling.
Yes.
And it's compiling and processing faster than we can. But but that's what it's doing. It's not really producing, which means that it can only make use of what it can grab.
Yeah.
And the fact is, like, I mean, we've produced so much media
that is racist.
So many pictures like that. And it constantly gets attention. And so that's what it's going to spit. That's what it's going to spit back out. So much of that is already out there.
Yeah.
That it's going to be difficult. It's difficult to get away from.
Is the answer simply moderation? I mean, it feels like we've already given up the idea that AI is going to go anywhere. So is AI kind of like we do everything else? Well, let's just try to use it wisely. Or do you feel like it's a more fundamental issue that because AI is going to basically scour the internet and scour all of our personal data and reflect to us back who we are, we're going to see ourselves for who we are, which is like in many ways dealing with racial bias. So should we pull the plug?
Yeah. I don't know. I worry with AI, it's just going to make
Except for when you're making content.
I do need it to help come up with episode titles.
Right.
But I worry it's just going to make us dumber and dumber. Like, I think of it kind of like the calculator. Like, I think supposedly before calculators, people used to be really good at math, like in their head.
Oh.
Like they could do complex, multiplication and addition in their heads. But once you have the calculator, then you're just not going to use that part of your brain. And is something similar with AI going to happen?
I was explaining that to my son, or my son or somebody. I was talking to someone about phone numbers.
Yeah.
And I used to memorize people's phone numbers. We're talking in the context where back in the day, you'd have to actually go up to a person, ask them, like a lunatic. You would go up to a stranger in the mall and meet them and say, 5 minutes later, can I have your phone number? And so sometimes you would write it on a sheet of paper and hope that you didn't lose it on the way home. But if you're a real G, you have to say, you know what? This pocket is not reliable. I could lose this thing. So you would just look at it for like a minute and memorize the number.
Yeah.
I do not know anybody's number except for my wife's. Like, even my kids. If my phone died and someone said, contact your kids, it's just like, y'all just out of luck.
Sorry.
It's tough. And I'm going to be honest, my wife's number don't just pop into my head. Like, I don't just say it clean. I kind of go, da, da, da. Oh, yeah. It's not confident. And my granddad's phone number, which has not changed since I was a kid. I mean, like, it's 40 years old. Comes and goes. Comes and goes. So there was another AI thing that you saw that was also freaking you out. What was that one about?
This was about the guy who gave Google's AI, Gemini, complete access to his Google Drive,
which is a bad call.
Which is, I mean, he said it's like 20 years worth of information about him, and then had the AI write a birthday note to one of his friends. And he said the note was really good. Yeah. It had personal anecdotes and like it was well written and this, that, the other. And I'm reading this and I just keep thinking of that famous Jurassic Park line that they tried so hard to figure out if they could, that they never stopped to think about if they should. Because man, I'm telling you, if one of my friends wrote me a note and he's like, actually AI just wrote the note. I'm like, I don't want this then.
So I saw that article in The Atlantic and I said, let me see if this is actually true. So I went and I looked and I said, AI, tell me everything that you know about like me and my wife's relationship. And what it did is it pulled stuff from my memoirs and all the like stray anecdotes that I just said in passing in the New York Times. And I was like, this is way too accurate to know. These are the things they like to do. I was like, whoa, get out of my business. Hey, whoa. And then they said, at the end, it says, here's key things that you can take from the relationship. Like it's a lesson to be learned.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my goodness, we're doomed. Okay.
Excuse you.
So, but I do think, and we'll talk about this off air. You said, if you found out your friend had actually, like if I wrote an AI note saying, even though we joke around a lot, I really appreciate what you do on the podcast. If I sent you that email and you said, this is very nice, and you found out later that it was AI, like, how would you feel?
I mean, like, well, Esau, what was the point of this? Because like I feel like we are outsourcing human connection to AI.
Mm-hmm.
Like it would be like someday you die, and at your funeral, everyone just sends their AI bot to your funeral to pay their respects. And it's like, no. The point of human relationship is to put others first, to sacrifice, it's inconvenient and messy. And that is where the beauty and joy comes in. And when we just prioritize efficiency and laziness, it's not about the note. It is about taking the time to pour over the note and thinking. Like, that's what means a lot to someone.
I'm going to pour on. I'm going to bleed on the note, on the email.
Talk about how amazing I am and how much you love me as your producer.
One of my questions.
I'll write the note.
one of my questions for really everybody when it comes to this, whether they're in various industries or whatever. My question is, what is it that you do that is slow because it needs to be slow?
Yeah.
Because those are the kinds of things that we're going to need to protect. Because those are the things that we're going to need to protect. Yeah. I think about preaching. I would never use an AI written sermon because I don't preach just to produce a particular product.
Yeah. Right.
I preach because there's work that the word has to do in me as I prepare it.
Yeah. That
then the people who hear that sermon can see that God has done that work in me before I can preach it. Similarly, there are things that we do just kind of as we work that we need to work through so that we can be shaped into particular kinds of people.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's precisely the brokenness or the inefficiency or the human parts of communication makes it beautiful. My kids, they're little and they write these like cards for me on Father's Day where the spelling is bad, and you can kind of see over time their handwriting gets better. I would never want my daughter to kind of go give an AI version of a kid's. I want it, and so I think that what makes something human, or even like bad poetry or bad lines that you just kind of say to your significant other because you're just in love and you just kind of come with, like, that's what you remember. You remember the imperfections. We were having church 2 weeks ago, and I don't know if I talked about this on the podcast. Somebody was playing the piano. And the piano, like the stand broke and it fell down in the middle of communion. And people are like freaking. They said that I didn't even turn around, which I didn't remember. I didn't turn around. I just kept handing out communion. But the people talked about that for weeks afterwards because they said the fact that nobody turned around and made the mean face made them feel like this could be a church where it's okay to make mistakes. It was like the imperfection. And so like we think, if we can get a Sunday or a service or an event that is completely perfect, then that's going to somehow usher in the kingdom of God. But like you said earlier, it is the imperfections that make something beautiful. Yeah. Speaking of beautiful, look at this transition. I'm getting better. Speaking of beautiful, we're going to talk about something that ain't that beautiful. But claims to be, in the tradition of your name not matching what you are, recently on July the 4th or July the 3rd, I think it was signed on the 4th.
Signed on the 4th.
Signed on the 4th. The Trump's big, beautiful bill became law. And in a moment of rare ecumenism, you had the National Baptist Convention, USA, historically black denomination of over 5 million people. The bishops of the Roman Catholic Church also came out and made a statement on it. The CCCU, the Coalition for Christian Colleges and Universities, also made a statement about it. So that's evangelicals, the Black church, and the Catholics all said something about the problems in this bill. So Malcolm, have you heard about or have an opinion about, and I'm going to hold off if I can, and we'll see about if we get to Speaker Johnson's use of 2 Corinthians. Did you see that?
Oh my gosh, yeah, the Ministry of Reconciliation thing.
I'm going to hold off on that one to the second half of this discussion. But what were your reactions to, what have you heard about the big beautiful bill? So, and you know what? Yeah. You know what?
Yeah.
One of the things that we have to do, we got to be able to describe reality as it is. I'm not calling it the big beautiful bill. We're going to call it the completely problematic bill.
That's great. The completely problematic bill.
Okay, tell me about the completely problematic bill. What have you heard? What do you think? What's your give me a take?
Three big issues. One, that it is kind of a massive redistribution from the poor to the rich. So I think about the cuts that are made to our to our social safety net, which is one of the primary roles of government. For me, and I argue this in the book, that there are two kind of primary things that government can do. It can create a floor through which people can't fall, which is the social safety net. And it can kind of restrict and restrain the most exploitative arms of capitalism. This kind of guts, in many ways, makes the safety net accessible to fewer people, and funnels cuts into the hands of the rich.
Did you have any stats on that? I know you're our stats guy. We also call you Producer Mike and Stats Mike. Can you say anything about some of the redistribution of wealth that we have in the bill?
Yeah. So one stat says the bill will lead to 60% of the tax cuts going to the top 20% of households.
Okay.
And this will add trillions to the national debt.
Yeah, I read somewhere, forgive me, people yell at me, but I'm not an economist and I just read stuff and I should have written it down. But I think it said something, I saw one study where like the top 1% of earners in the United States, something like over the course of this bill, get around $1 trillion in tax relief. And if you add up all of the lost income from people coming off welfare and those other things, there'll be $1 trillion lost to the poor. And so they're funding, what is actually happening is they're funding the tax cut by reducing the safety net. And so one of the ways, did you read about how they're actually doing this? Like how they're affecting the cut of Medicaid? Because they're saying they're not actually cutting Medicaid, they're cutting abuse. But can you talk a little bit about how it's happening?
Well, and part of it is through work requirements, which is something that they did with welfare reform too. But part of it is, and this is an important part of the language that is used. The people who matter are the people who work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's a dangerous, that's in many ways actually a dangerous set of assumptions, because there is a significant population of people, of needy folks in this country particularly, who don't work also because they can't work.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think about the disabled. I think about children. I think about the elderly. There are a number of folks. And so the constant language of the only people who matter are the people who work, like that is what that's also doing, is building in us the assumption that the only people who actually deserve food, housing, and all those kinds of things are people who contribute economically in a particular way. And that's a dangerous set of assumptions.
Hi, it's Esau. If you're looking for another fascinating podcast that touches on religion and spirituality, I have the perfect recommendation for you. The Signal Award-winning show, No Small Endeavor. As a friend and recent guest of the podcast, I can truly say it's worth a listen. Produced by Great Feeling Studios and PRX, No Small Endeavor explores what it means to live a good life. Each episode, host Lee C. Kemp sits down with special guests like pastor and theologian Tish Harrison Warren, civil rights hero Reverend James Lawson, and one of the world's most influential living theologians, Stanley Hauerwas, to discuss how their faith shaped their journey. If you're looking for a place to start, check out their recent episode with Americana songwriter Drew Holcomb, in which he unpacks how creativity is a way to overcome fear, make something that didn't exist before. It's a beautiful heart-to-heart. Don't miss out. Follow No Small Endeavor on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.
Field got him doing football numbers, only average grown. He was acting grown.
One of the things that I saw as it relates to if you don't work, like they're going to cut off the Medicaid. The issue is not just whether or not you work, whether or not you can prove that you work. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people who are in the gig economy who work for, who might do Uber and who might do DoorDash and who might, do all of these things. And you got to fill out the paperwork to prove that you do work. And, if you have people who are on the undereducated, the lower part of the economy, navigating all of the logistical realities that comes with being insured seems to be like another issue. So the issue isn't whether or not you can work. The issue is whether or not you can game the system. And if you can't game the system, if you don't even have access to the people to game the system. And I remember this is important because when I remember when I was in high school and there was a bunch of first generation students who were trying to go to college. It may not seem to be related, but it actually is. And a lot of them had never had parents who filled out financial aid forms before. And because the school was overworked, you had like just a couple of guidance counselors. You have all these guidance counselors who are overworked, who are trying to explain to these students. It's what they tend to do, which is it was not a negative reaction. They tended to focus on the most exceptional student. And what I noticed when I got to college is a lot of the African-American students were exceptional because they were the ones who kind of made it. And just like the normal B student who, because of workload, would have slid through the cracks in a lower income space, were actually in college and at university. And I was just shocked because I didn't realize that you could be a B student and go to college. That was not even a category for me. And I began to think about it in this way. Who is it that is going to work hard and not have insurance just because the system feels intimidating for them? So that's another issue that I saw.
Well, and one other thing with that, of just like, this is really just work reporting. So now all of these states have to create new infrastructure to manage all of the paperwork that their people need to fill out, it's creating a ton of red tape. Georgia has a similar system in place already. You guys know for every $1 that they spend in insurance on someone who needs it, they're spending $9 in overhead.
So where did you get that from? So people are going to yell at you. So you can put on.
This is from The Atlantic. It's called Annoying People to Death. And
this is what I was talking about.
And it's just like, it's going through how it's not even only 8% of people who receive Medicaid are people who don't currently work. 8%. And of those 8%, most of those are just elderly people who no one will hire because they don't want to hire elderly people. And so it just doesn't even solve the very problem it's claiming to. It's making it worse.
One of the things that the reason that the Coalition for Christian Colleges and Universities, they issued a press release too.
Oh, I wanted to talk about that.
And so they were criticizing the bill because the bill threatens to take away federal funds based upon the long-term income of the graduates. So basically, if your program isn't making enough money for the graduates, that you're going to potentially lose federal funding. And the argument that they made was, well, Christians often choose low-paying jobs because they want to serve their community. And so, or if you want to say, I want to go into the nonprofit sector, or I want to go into counseling, and there's tons of jobs that require master's degrees that are low-paying. And so by prioritizing the only measurable outcome as financial remuneration, that idea is in itself sub-Christian. And I thought that was a really interesting critique because it is true. Most other careers, and this is not a woe is me, but most other careers, you get a master's degree, you make more money. You don't get a raise, you get a master's degree as a pastor. You just get a master's degree because you want to learn the Bible and tell people about it. And so that idea, like you said, that not only valuable people, the people who are able to work, but education is being funneled through a strictly utilitarian lens of financial remuneration.
This is as I keep trying to tell people, like, this is just the logic of neoliberal capitalism, just like in legislation. The only things that matter are the things that you can commodify, and value is primarily understood as economic value.
Yeah.
And I fully agree with the argument of the CCCU that one of the claims, and this is happening in legislatures around the country, that the argument is that the primary purpose of higher education is to produce better workers, or workers that can make more money, and in the event that you don't produce better workers or higher paid workers, you're failing as an institution. Yeah. And even in a situation, because we just talked about like what job prospects look like because of AI. When you have students that then graduate into a low hire, low fire economy, where it's hard to get a job, but the folks who have jobs aren't gonna lose them. You end up blaming and punishing higher education institutions for the broader failure of the market. Like, it's just all of these things.
The other thing that I just thought that was so interesting is one of the fundamental things, and when I say metaphor, it's the wrong word, because it's true. One of the organizer principles, and Paul talks about this, but I can go full Bible for a minute.
Yeah, do it.
Paul says Christ, though he was rich for our sakes, became poor.
Come on now.
Like Philippians chapter 2, although he was a form of God, he did not consider equality with God something to be grasped or exploited to his own advantage, but he made himself nothing, being found in the form of a servant. The idea that Christ, who was all powerful, humbled himself and came down, the Son of Man came not to serve, but to serve, but he can give his life as a ransom for many. That motivating principle that challenges all the fundamental operating postures of Rome, that was all about getting ahead and defeating your opponent. And instead, the idea was service. This might seem to be like an overstatement of the case. To value money as the primary operating principle is a sub-Christian idea. Now, it is also true, before people think I'm being like too radical, Paul does say that people who did not work, they should get a job. But do you know why he says so? So that you might be able to help others. And so he never said you should just work so that you can accumulate wealth. He said, let the thief no longer steal, let the thief get a job so that he might be a servant to the community. So even the idea of work was so that they would have the dignity of the ability to serve within their community. And so I think that, could I talk about one more? Yeah. The last group. We talked about the coalition of Christian colleges. The black church, the Baptists pulled up, and I love the Baptists. They quoted you can look this up, National Baptist Convention USA. They put out a statement, and in their statement, they quoted Psalm 82. Psalm 82, if you want to look in your Bibles, talks about God is the defender of the helpless and the needy. And the interesting part about that I found that was so interesting, I don't know how much thought, I'm sure they must have understood it. And in that particular context, Psalm 82 is actually a criticism of people in power who think of themselves as deities. And because they think of themselves as deities, they think they're above judgment. And God says, although you say that you are gods, I'm going to judge you if you don't do these things properly. And so they drew upon this entire tradition of saying that people with power and resources ought to be the people who are concerned with the disenfranchised. And they then oppose the big, beautiful bill on religious grounds. And so what you see here then is these like two contrasting almost gospels, the gospel of wealth and the gospel of the kingdom.
They're not almost two gospels. They are two gospels. I mean, to compound what you said, I don't think commitment to money is sub-Christian. I think it's fundamentally anti-Christ.
There we go. I was being
nice. I have no, when it comes to greed, there's not a nice thing in me. Yeah. Mammon is the other god that we're up against.
Yeah, I was writing an op-ed and I thought about dropping the language of mammon, but I thought that was 20% too Christian.
Right.
But I almost put a mammon in there. So,
well, I'm just glad, you guys, that even though this bill is terrible, there's no way there's going to be unintended consequences that will cause loss of life and tragedy that was completely preventable and avoidable.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm just glad that's not going to happen.
Sure would be bad if that happened.
So, thank you for that calm, that kind transition. We have this thing in the Black community where sometimes we say you have to laugh or you're just going to cry. And so when we see these things, it's not even like mockery. It's almost like, this is ridiculous. And we see things like the big, beautiful bill as being just fundamental, I call it the big problematic bill, the completely problematic bill. We see it as being so clearly a money grab that it's hard to do anything other than almost give it the amount of intellectual seriousness that it deserves. It's not an intellectually serious endeavor. What happened over the course of the weekend that I think everybody has read about and knew about was the disaster that took place in Texas, where I think the last count, there were over 95 people who were killed in a flash flood. And there's a lot that goes into how do we make sense of this? There is the divine part, like how do you make sense of a natural disaster that takes so many innocent lives? Like, why would a good God allow for a storm to do something like this? And then there's the pragmatic, or let's call it the human element. How do we make sense of who is responsible and whether and to see whether or not these things are preventable? And I want to say a couple of things just to frame this. First of all, sometimes things in the abstract we don't take seriously enough. And so it's hard to get enough attention to issues of national concern unless there's an inciting incident. And so we don't want to use the lives of the 95 people who died to score some kind of political points. But it would be a kind of negligence of duty for us not to stop and reflect as a country whenever a tragedy happens, whether it's a school shooting or whatever it is to say, well, what can we do as a country or as a people to make this thing, to reduce the tragedy that happens to people? And if we come to the conclusion there's nothing we can do, that's fine. But the fact that we go through the intellectual exercise is not to me scoring political points. It is actually a place to, it's what we call to do. It's the reason why Frederick Douglass went to the slave at the 4th of July. Do you know why that was so important? Because it happened during the 4th of July. In other words, these things sometimes come together. So the first, let's see if we can take them in turn. Before we get to the human element of it, how do you make sense of something like this as a Christian? Just the fact that there are tragedies where it's just things happen to people and there's a loss of life. Have you pastored or ministered to anybody in that context?
I just preached on Job yesterday, so we were planning to do that anyway, and then it always happens whenever I end up preaching. This happens a lot where I decide to preach a text. I mean, we decided months ago, but then when I decide to preach a text like this, like in the week leading up, there are things that make it all the more relevant. And one of the things that I pressed was that in the face of suffering, we generally have two responses that are expressed, at least in Job, by Job's wife and by Job's friends. One is despair, and the other is activism.
Yeah.
So despair, as in like, okay, so this suffering is so great, I have no idea what to do. There's nothing I can do, so I'm just gonna do nothing. I give up. And then there's the other side that says, okay, well, I'm gonna try to do everything.
Yeah.
Because what that'll do is it'll get my mind off of my mind off of it. I'll put my hands to something. There's something I definitely should have done. What is that thing? As I look forward, what's the thing that let me just do my way out of this. And one of the and yet the encouragement of the scriptures is to obey the Lord and to endure.
Yeah.
And that we endure together. Yeah. Because we suffer together. And it's actually the fact that we're told Paul says this, Peter says this, others, but that we actually have an opportunity to share with Christ in his suffering so that we can share with him in his glory. Yeah. That's a profoundly different way of thinking about suffering than what's generally on offer. Yeah. We generally think, okay, well, I either hide from this or I kind of work my way out of it. Yeah. And so we ask the Lord to be with us, particularly in these moments of tragedy where we can't conceive of a reason for it. It's specific to Job because Job never finds out why he goes through what he goes through. But that's one word.
When I think about this, I tend to say two things. First is we don't always, as Christians, take the fall seriously. Which says that not only is like our physical body subject to decay and death, but the creation itself is broken. Yeah. And that the redemption that God offers is not simply a rescue of our souls into some kind of disembodied bliss, but the renewal of all creation. And so the whole idea that all of creation needs to be redeemed suggests this central aspect of Christian teaching and theology, that the fate of humanity and creation themselves are interwoven. And we see the reality of that brokenness sometimes fresh, exploding out to us in ways that are troubling. The second thing that I want to say is there is no intellectual answer to the problem of evil that makes people feel better. So even if I could explain to you theologically why these things happen, what has only ever been a comfort to me is that in the midst of tragedy, God is there. Like the incarnation is the idea that God is not set apart from our suffering, but that God comes alongside us. And if you talk to anybody who is a person in faith who've gone through difficulties, what they've actually said is the greatest comfort was not some piece of advice or an anecdote that people got them, but literally the presence of God with them in the midst of suffering. And so I don't have an answer. Or, I mean, you can read theodicy all that you want, but like when it's your family member or someone you care about, all I can offer for you is prayer and commending God's presence with you. Now, it is also the case that these types of events sometimes reveal inequalities that exist in our society. One of the things that happened in this particular case, and that's happened in other disasters, this is a low-income area that was always subject to flooding. And so you do see that sometimes, especially in the context of climate change, your resources can put you, I'm not saying that everybody who died was poor. I'm saying that in general, resources can put you in a position where the worst of these things also don't happen to you. And so these kinds of ways in which we create a economic substructure where it's hard for the people at the underclass to improve their lives and move to better places has implications. But even more than that, it is to me not unfair to ask questions about the ways in which some of the cuts and issues that have happened related to weather and the environment that was done by this administration may have had some influence. Did you have some information? I know there was a story in the New York Times that we talked about before we recorded.
So there's a couple stories, but 8 years ago, in the aftermath of another flood in the same area, officials in Kerr County debated whether or not more needed to be done to build a warning system along the banks of the river. And they considered a system with sirens and river gauges, along with other modern communication tools. And when it came down to it, they decided that when they failed to secure a $1 million grant to fund the project, they decided it was not worth it. As one city commissioner said at the time, who voted against a $50,000 engineering study to look more into this, he said, "I think this whole thing is a little extravagant for Kerr County with all these sirens and such." There's also, at the national level, the National Weather Service has seen cuts along with all the other government departments. These staffing shortages have included, let me find it here, was missing a senior hydrologist and a staff forecaster and a meteorologist in charge of the San Angelo office, which was responsible for this area. And listen, I mean, a lot of the people in this article, this is in the New York Times, would say, it's not like if we had these three people, this wouldn't have happened. But like the rains came so fast and so hard that the forecasts were pretty good even, that we kind of saw this coming. But he said what we did lack was the institutional knowledge we had prior, that these people knew how to communicate to the local officials to get the word out, to get the warnings out. And we didn't have that. And I think at one point they asked him, like, do you think it would have made a difference? And he said, I don't know, but it sure would have helped.
Yeah, I think that one of the questions to me that undergirds all of this is, it would be, like you said, unfair to make at this point, a day or two later, to make these kind of direct correlations. But this is what I want to say. Fundamentally, what I think the issue is one of trust. Do we feel like our government is doing everything in their power and they're sparing no expense to keep us safe? And if I feel like we've done everything that we can, then it's a human error. Like, there is no playbook on like how to deal with water. I mean, there may be a playbook. It's hard to say that you're going to execute that thing perfectly, so there is no loss of life and everybody kind of gets away without any damage being done to them. But the larger issue is, do I trust the people who are in charge, that their concern is the safety and doing everything that they can to make sure we're safe? And in the context where all I'm seeing about is government inefficiency and we're cutting all of these programs, it's hard for me to say, how strategic were you in the things that you cut? And what are the implications of that? Not just in this particular circumstances, but broadly speaking for the healthy functioning of our government. Is that an unfair thing to say, Malcolm?
I don't think it's unfair. I think we're dealing with an ethos where the government is understood as a bad thing. So the less that the government does, the better. And people have not really processed how much good we experience purely because the government does it. How positive public goods are, as few of them as we now have. I mean, there are a few places like public libraries where you can just go there and not be expected to buy anything. And you can just be like those,
read books.
Those places and read books. Like there are fewer and fewer of those kinds of places as the years go by. As we kind of submit everything that we're coming in contact with to the
I want to say this too, because maybe this is the part that's annoying me. I feel like we're getting bullied publicly into pretending like the stuff that the government did that was good for us wasn't actually that good. So like you can yell at me all that you want about vaccines. They save people's lives. And as a matter of fact, the COVID vaccine saved people's lives. And so we have this idea that if you're mad enough about a topic, that can kind of shut down all reasonable discourse. And it is fair for me to be able to say, as a person of faith, I am willing to give up a portion of my resources for the actual common good if it's a possibility that those things save. And I'm actually, you know what I'm also willing to do? I want to develop a certain amount of inefficiency. Like, I know that like there's going to be, in other words, I would rather be 5% inefficient or 10% inefficient than 20% less compassionate. And it feels like we are using efficiency as this moral operating principle without establishing that the inefficiency is the real problem. And the long-term result of that is a lack of compassion for the people who might be suffering the most.
I just keep thinking, I just keep thinking of Elon Musk parading around with that chainsaw at the beginning of this administration and Doge. And like there is no doubt there is government corruption, there is government waste. Good grief. Anyone who's ever worked with a government industry knows that for a fact. But if I have a cancer in my body, I want my doctor to approach it with a scalpel, not a chainsaw.
Give him a bucket of money.
Like when we
hold on. Give him a bucket of money, and if he's still 200,000 and 800,000 and goes to a cancer resort, like fix me, bro. Fix me. Take my money. Fix me. Sorry, go ahead.
But yeah, that's the thing. When we approach everything, when I got so annoyed when I saw everyone say like, it's just so simple, just make cuts and that'll be that. And when we approach something this complex with a chainsaw, you're going to lose a limb. You're going to lose lives in Texas that didn't need to be lost. And we will never know for sure how many lives would have lost had these cuts not been made. But they also don't deserve the benefit of the doubt because of the cuts that have been made and because of how much they have prioritized efficiency over the lives of people.
Okay. Malcolm, you are the writer of the anti-greed gospel. It feels like this was a prophetic book that you had that gets us ready for this kind of season of time that we're living in. Rather than just complaining about AI and the big problematic bills and the cuts to the safety net that may influence people, what is some encouragement or something that you would say we need to think about as Christians moving forward to close out the podcast? I might say something afterwards. We might let Mike talk. We need to give Mike's corner. So we'll give Mike. We'll let Mike talk in Mike's corner. We'll let him say something else. But go ahead.
Sure. The thing about dark times like the current times that we're in is that they are. I deeply believe that these are times of testing. So after preaching through Revelation, I'm like, there sometimes there need to be circumstances that reveal those who are committed to the way of the Lamb and those who are committed to the way of the beast. And it is, I think we're approaching and probably currently in a time where commitment to Christ and Christ's priorities, especially commitment to the vulnerable, is going to be unpopular. When we have hundreds of billions and billions of dollars being, and this was the other element of the completely problematic bill that I didn't mention before, but the money that's going specifically into immigration enforcement, where like ICE now becomes in some like basically the third biggest military in the world, like that, just that organization, like that funding of violence is essentially going to. I mean, we're gonna be in a situation where we're going to be called to materially love our neighbors in some ways that, that could be risky. So my call to the church is really to do the three things that I say in the book, that we've got to build communities of deep economic solidarity, that we have to recognize that like love is a material commitment. Yeah. So that means we look at the things that we have as things fundamentally meant to be shared, comes out of the incarnation. It means that we build communities that refuse to engage in violence, because one of the other things that this kind of precarity does is it breeds violence. Like, this is how revolutions happen. Yeah. Like this is what happens. And so as we think about how we as the church we're going to navigate that, we have to think about the fact that Christ has called us to love not just our neighbors, our brothers and sisters, but even our enemies. Yeah. That's going to be an important element of our witness. And we have to be communities of prophetic truth telling. That is, we have to be willing to tell the truth about this stuff. Yeah. We have to be willing to say those things even when they're unpopular.
This is what I think. Maybe it's okay. Can I close the pod? Yeah. I'm just going to refuse to choose. And this is what I mean. I feel like sometimes you see something like the unabashed greed at the core of the big problematic bill. Mm-hmm. And we kind of put this greed over against like other things. So like, oh, you say you care about life in the womb, but look at your greed. And so you end up creating this idea, these Christian ideas have to fight with one another. And I feel, or like you want to say, oh, you say you believe in the Bible, but you don't care about the greed. I said, you know what? What if I continue to want it all? What if I continue to say, I want to be a Christian who's informed by the great tradition, who cares about the vulnerable wherever they might be, who cares about the mother and the child, who cares about the migrant, who cares about the person falling to the safety net? What if it's like the challenge of the church? And maybe I've talked about this. A friend of mine told me about the latter part. I'm not an Augustine scholar, so Augustine scholars can yell at me if they want to. But he talked to me a lot about the latter part of Augustine's writing career. And then he talked about how his battle against, he was fighting against Pelagianism so hard that it actually distorts his theological witness, and that pre-Augustine was better because he got so caught up in this enemy that it twisted his theology in certain ways. And so what I want to do is to say that the Christian tradition is flexible enough to witness to the variety of issues that we're facing, because we're not in a singular crisis, and we have a poly crisis that are happening, a bunch of things all at once. And then in this moment, it's important for the church to witness not just some of the truth, but the entirety of the truth. It was a heavy podcast, but I hope you listen to it anyway. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Esau Macaulay podcast. Also, we have a YouTube thing. We're trying to get our YouTube popping. And so we have like a YouTube page on the Holy Post Media. Is that what it's called?
Make sure to follow Holy Post Media on YouTube.
Yeah.
Subscribe to follow the Esau Macaulay podcast playlist.
Yeah, follow that. And if you do that.
Leave a comment about how awesome Mike and Malcolm are.
I mean, there's too many Mike comments. We need to get some I love Esau comments, or maybe like bring Malcolm on more. Let's focus on that. Mike's got enough comments. Thank y'all for listening. We'll talk to you next week. The Esau Macaulay podcast is a production of Holy Post Media, produced by Mike Stay Low, Stray Low. If you know, now you know. Edited by Seth Gorvette, like a Corvette. Music by Rob Knorr. Make sure to follow the show wherever you get your podcast and leave a review so more people can find it. See you next time. I'm out.